You were off skiing last week, is that right?
I was off skiing last week in the sunshine while you were in Morocco in the sunshine.
True.
We both went to find some vitamin D.
We're not gonna we're not gonna make listeners happy talking about our holidays, right?
No,
No.
no, but now we're back in the
Back,
clouds.
back in the clouds, exactly, in the cold clouds.
Yeah,
Frank is in the waiting room, so we just get going.
yeah, let's do it.
Hey Sarah, hey Martin, hey.
Hey, hi Frank, how's it going?
Good, good. How are you?
Yeah, yeah. Are you in sunny California or where are you calling in from? Yeah.
I am.
Nice.
Summer already started here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Whereabouts are you?
We are kind of like 20, 30 kind of minutes north of San Diego. It's a small town called Encinitas. It's really beautiful here.
Yeah.
That's what's home for the last
Yeah.
8 years.
I know. I actually know it. We did a house swap to there. Did you know it as well, Sarah?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Ah,
paradise.
cool. What brought you here?
Holiday.
Holiday.
Yes. Bit of a team.
Nice. Well, why not? I mean, everybody gets
Yeah.
in at some point.
I don't think I even
No,
pretended
it's a
it was
beautiful
work. I
spot.
just, we did a
Yeah.
house swap, and I remember arriving, and one of the neighbors just randomly came up to us, said hello, and said, "Welcome to paradise." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, no, it's like I'm also pretending to work here, it's
Yeah.
like
That's right. Oh, well, thanks for joining us. We're going to dig into a little bit of your background and my sugar journey, and then the 9 a. Or then we'll move to your selected company, and then we'll finish with 9 a.m. if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. You
Yeah.
just let me know.
Yeah. Yeah. So give us a little bit of background to Frank. We got to know each other around the My Sugar days, but give us a little bit of background to how you came to starting the company in the first place and what was the motivation and how did you get there?
Yeah, I think, when it comes to the companies I started, like My Sugar and also 9am Health, it's a very personal motivation. I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 1997. And without that diagnosis, I would for sure make something very, very different. It was interesting. I got diagnosed in 1997, and then like 10 years I just lived with the disease, but my therapy really went downhill, and I thought, okay, I need to do something. And and I basically wanted to take the destiny in my own hands. I thought, I am a patient. I know, what kind of product I would like to use. I want to be treated as a patient, and start a company. And yeah, we built that company to one of the most successful digital diabetes platforms out there. And yeah, I'm still like really incredibly proud of what we did. And yeah, as you maybe know, we sold it in 2017 to Roche, but My Sugar is still doing fantastic. I was recently in the offices in Vienna. 200 people work there. They have 5 million patients now on the platform. Roche is doing a great job with it. So I'm glad it's in good hands.
Tell us from the diagnosis to starting a company. That's not a natural response for a lot of people. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, like type 1 diabetes is really a beast because, it deeply impacts your life. So you have to really change kind of how you eat, when you eat, what you eat, and also kind of it always needs to be top of mind. I'm using an app also to manage my diabetes, and I was checking my app stats, and I spent more than an hour per day in that app. Like it's really crazy. So you are constantly, and still, like treating diabetes today versus 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it's day and night. So today we use like a lot of algorithms and basically closed loop system to inject insulin, all that, but still, you need to constantly think about it. And that's really annoying. A lot of people, struggle, of course, with it because it so deeply impacts your life. And then and back then 20 years ago it was more about kind of pricking your finger, and I probably pricked my finger like 20 times per day and never wrote down any data. but type 1 diabetes is a totally data-driven disease. And I thought, okay, how can I motivate myself, to write down my data? And, myself and my co-founders, and we came up with the idea, okay, let's gamify the whole thing. Let's motivate people to kind of write down their diabetes data, because once you have the data, you can visualize it better and properly and give kind of nudges, advices, how you better treat yourself, or help just to better understand the data. And yeah, that's what we did, and yeah, it worked okay.
Yeah, no, it worked very well.
Yeah.
But what was the kind of flash? Was there a kind of flashbulb moment of I'm going to start a company? Like, from the diagnosis through to all that, pain that you talked about and all that hassle, through to I'm going to start a company that will help other people and make money.
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly, it was a process, clearly, so a friend and so Gerald, my co-founder and very good friend, we're bouncing back and forth ideas, what we could do. And then more on the sidetrack, I told Gerald, oh my God, my diabetes, it's again so horrible, and blah, blah, blah. And basically he said, hey, Frank, let's do something about it, and yeah, and then we got into that rabbit hole. And, we found it so much more interesting to solve that problem versus all the other things we were thinking about, and we started the company, and we didn't really had like so much of a vision how we make money with it or what we wanted to solve the problem. And yeah, I think that's the best and biggest motivation you can have, to start a company.
Yeah.
So solving a problem, a very acute problem for you and your friend, I think is a good way. So
yeah.
So it's a process and things were bouncing back and forth, but I guess there were milestones along the journey to being a successful, one of the few successful exits. And then also, as you say, continuing to have a very strong presence after the acquisition with Roche. But talk us through a little bit about those early days of, trying to find other customers and trying to figure out like what the business model was and what that, I'm sure it's
sure. Yeah, I think that, at My Sugar, we clearly had one, I would almost call it like an unfair advantage. And I would argue we still have it at 9am Health. We were our own customers. So we really knew kind of how we had to build the product so that it would resonate with the community, with our users, with the patients. And so that was clearly kind of what made us stood out. But then, although kind of My Sugar in hindsight is such a success story, it's really, we all founders, and also all early employees, we have not forgotten how hard it was, especially in the first 3 or 4 years, to keep the lights on, basically, because honestly, there was no business model. We just built a product, we solved a problem. Think about, digital health in the year 2011, 2012, 2013. There was no digital health. It was really weird. We knocked on the doors of, big medtech companies, and they said, oh my gosh, why should our patients ever use an app, to manage their diabetes? It was totally foreign, And yeah, I think, and then we certainly benefited from that, evolving ecosystem around digital health, connected devices, more openness of medtech companies, and later on also pharma companies to think through kind of what could a digital journey look like. And and then of course, it kind of accumulated in an exit. And that was, of course, clearly also one of the most exciting kind of periods of my life, at least from my professional life. These discussions around an exit, should we sell, should we not, and it was a very, very interesting dynamic around it, of course.
And how are you funded? How did you keep the lights on? So how are you funding yourself in that period?
Yeah, it was interesting. So there were two really important things. So first, I think it has a lot to do with the founders being able to survive on a very, very small salary. I consider, I think, I have been like
that
in my
rules
early
out
30s. Yeah, it's like that's why, you know, I think it's so important, you know, that you like try to create something earlier in your life, because later it gets more and more complicated. If you have a family, you know, you're kind of used to a certain
More people to
lifestyle.
feed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, it gets harder, you know. And so I think that was one factor. Then we had, from the very, very early days, we had an amazing business angel who also kind of believed in the story, you know, and supported us along the way. Johan Hansmann, I don't know if you heard about the Hansmann group. It's a great group. Kind of, he was able to knit a very close, tight community in Austria, but also basically all over Europe, of founders who are just passionate about what they do. And so he continued to finance us. And then, and you know, we founded the company in Vienna, in Austria. And the state of Austria, they have a really good kind of grant program. And so we basically, in the first 3 years, we survived of grants and kind of an angel investment. So and that kept the lights on. And then after that initial phase, you know, where we first, you know, need to figure out how we as a team work together, how to build a product and all that, nobody ever did it, you know. Yeah, we were slowly but surely able, you know, to kind of have more users. The numbers were starting to kind of accelerate in their growth. And so we got more known in the diabetes community, in the medtech community, and one thing led to the other. And then we raised a Series A with two VCs, so XL Health from Berlin, and Roche Ventures. And that was kind of the real first financing round we did. And overall, my sugar, we raised 7 million euros. And I think, you know, and back then that was quite sizable, I think. Today that's a better seed round almost. But back in the days, it kept us running for 5-6 years basically.
Wow. Yeah.
And,
And that was also like, it was, of course, you know, it was an amazing exit for everybody involved, the founders, the employees. So we gave actually a lot of our proceeds to our employees, because, you know, as you know, in Europe, it's not so typical that employees ask for shares. And that was one thing. And then, of course, also like, it was one of these exits where everybody walked away happy, I think, and that was really amazing. So yeah,
fabulous. And where was the business at in terms of revenue when you sold? You were saying at the start,
you know,
business model, and then you had grants and angel money, but then
and you know, the business model, you know, I will not disclose the numbers. I'm not allowed to, you know, but I think, you know, we then also, like, imagine with more than when we sold the business, we had more than 1 million users on the platform, you know, and and then you can monetize 1 million users. So, and we found a good business model, and
Okay.
And who was it? Who did you have? So, I mean, that was your first exit into a corporate, no less. So was it your angel investor who was by your side, you know, thinking through how to do that deal, or who was guiding you through that?
Yeah. So no, I was very fortunate to have, you know, we had great investors. So it were mainly two people, like Johan Hansmann, you know, the angel investor, and then Adam Lin of iSeed Ventures, you know, who are two really good friends now, you know, and they were very close at my side. You know, without them, clearly, you know, we would have not known what to do. And they helped me through the process, and managed it to a good outcome then.
Good.
Fabulous. And so on that 9 or 10-year journey, Frank, were there times where you were like, okay, this isn't going to work, you know? Did you ever have moments where it's like, why did I decide to do this and not just look after myself?
You know, it's so funny. Oh, sure, you know that. You know that. I think when we think back, you know, and sometimes, you know, when we meet in Vienna over a beer, you know, and we talk about the good old times, you know, the funny thing is, no one of us ever thought of, you know, quitting or letting it go. It was, and that, you know, I'm so happy that, you know, and same applies now at 9 AM Health, you know, we're really amazing co-founders, you know, that who I consider my friends, you know, and I think that's the most important thing. If you start a business, you know, you want to have that, you know, group that you can really trust. And you know, there were so many problems, but I think because nobody of us ever thought about, you know, okay, we just stop what we do something else, we look for another job or whatnot, you know, and push through. Yeah, we ended up where we ended up. So and of course, you know, there were, and you know, and I never thought about letting it go. There were many days, of course, that, oh my gosh, you know, where do we find money to pay salaries and the typical stuff, you know, but no, there was no kind of thinking about not doing it, and even because I think we never doubted about the value of the product and, you know, the benefit it brings to patients. So I always think there must be something. But then at the end of the day, I must also say that kind of a clear learning is like it's such a fine line you walk on, you know, where the line between super success and total failure, and there were so many times where it could have gone, you know, both ways, you know, and it's of course, you know, a lot of hard work and all that, but also a bit of luck, you know, that you end on the right side, you know. And there are so many other amazing founders, great companies, you know, who without them doing anything wrong, you know, ended basically on the wrong end. So it's unfortunately also reality.
Yeah, and it's amazing then there's so many, you know, so many startups don't work, so many don't return, so many get integrated and then get killed because they're part of a bigger organization. So, you know, it's fabulous to think about it still being there and still thriving. I heard something, I don't know if it's true, Frank, that a lot of the employees were diabetics. And that was a kind of a core part of your success, is that so many people in the company, you know, personally resonated with the problem.
No, and one of my co-founders, Frederick, you know, who you also of course know, you know, and he also lives with type 1 diabetes, and many others. Well, you know, I think we always had like 30 to 40% of our employees living with type 1, and even when we have been like 70 or 80 employees. So that was like in our DNA, you know, that patient centricity. I think many companies talk about it and certainly try their best, but I think it was really in our DNA that we wanted to do the best for patients. Yeah.
So I can imagine it was a pretty busy time, and I can imagine the deal was pretty intense, and then going into a big company like Roche. Did you catch your breath at all before you decided to go again, or like what was it like going into Roche, and what was it like then when you left?
Yeah, you know, I was, of course, you know, thinking through what to do at the next step, you know, and I also I really enjoy investing into young companies and supporting founders, you know, especially in the diabetes space, but also in the healthcare space, or basically anywhere, you know, any area that I find interesting. But, you know, to be honest, that's only one thing I really understand, that's like diabetes and healthcare, you know, the rest, I just try to educate myself basically through an investment. But you know, I took a kind of a bit of a break, and I was thinking about, you know, doing like investment more and emphasize on it. But then I just felt like two things. You know, first, I found it a bit boring to just, you know, talk about, you know, give advice and blah blah. And I hope none of my investors, you know, current or future, will listen to that. But I also felt like, and you, to be a really good investor, I still need to be kind of actively working in companies and feel what's the pulse, you know, which products, you know, are companies using, what problems are they facing, and all that. And and then truth to be told is, as you might know, so I had an amazing boss at Roche, Marcel Gwinder, and I was talking to him like late 2019. Hey, you know, I want to transition, want to get out in the next few months, and we basically work on a transition plan. And then, as you know, early 2020, COVID came. So so many things changed, and what also changed, as in healthcare, many regulations expanded, and I think telehealth got basically boosted forward. I don't know, 5 or even 10 years, and there was one thing that always kind of bugged us a bit, at My Sugar, because it was a purely digital tool, and we were never, able to prescribe medication, titrate insulin up, down, and it is really hard um, to have like a full, yet to drive clinical outcomes meaningful only by lifestyle advice and lifestyle changes, and so we saw an opportunity with 9am Health that we can create basically a second generation of a chronic care platform that also prescribes medication and really kind of is able to holistically treat a patient, including labs, prescriptions, and care, that you really need to drive outcomes as good as possible. And that's why then at the end of the day I said, okay, let's do it again, and the great thing is, I did it with many of my former My Sugar co-founders or employees, and so that certainly gave us a head start.
Right. How did you end up in California? Where in the
yeah, it's a funny story.
Skipped over that. I was in Vienna, then I was
and true story is, like, when My Sugar in 2015, we're growing really fast, and most of the growth actually happened in the US. And so Frederick and I, Anton and I, we sat in airplanes all the time, flying to the US at conferences, meeting companies and all that, at a certain point of time, we were thinking about raising our Series B financing, and want to raise 20 million. And our investors said, hey, Frank, there's no chance you're going to kind of raise the money in Europe. Second, the market that's growing the fastest right now is US. You need to move there. So I totally did not want to move to the US. That was not my life plan. Never, ever what I think about moving, and but basically, Adam, one of my investors, he said, "No, Frank, you're the CEO. You need to go. There's no way, And others wanted to go, but you have to go." And he forced me, to this day, that's what I tell him. He forced me to move, and at the end of the day, I'm so glad, that he did. And we wanted to stay for 2 years. Now we're here for our 8 years, and we love it here. It's a great country, great place to live, and sometimes life is interesting.
So this podcast is about great companies, and we think about it in different ways. We think about it in terms of traditionally making returns for shareholders. We think about it in terms of solving problems for customers. We think about it in terms of looking after your employees. And then we think about it in terms of a broader impact to society and the economy. Right? So you have an amazing success story, Frank, on a lot of those fronts. And then you've decided to go again. What were the kind of big learnings over the 9 or 10 years building My Sugar that you're now saying, okay, I'm going to do this with the new company? It'd be good to kind of get a sense of what were the big lessons.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the product level, certainly, that we learned that only digital is really hard to use to drive long-lasting, meaningful clinical outcome. That was one learning. We were always struggling with that. And little caveat, I think, when you think about type 1 diabetes, kind of the data-driven approach is clearly working better than in type 2 diabetes. Because in type 2 diabetes, and so many other chronic conditions, you just need medications, because lifestyle changes are super, super hard. I live with type 1, so I have to do all these things. I don't do them every day, always, we're just humans.
We're
So,
human, yeah.
and yeah, so, and medications are not a bad thing, they keep you healthy. And especially, and the funny thing is, and that's really, really bugging and annoying me, is especially when it comes to chronic care, and the big things like type 2 diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia. There's so many great drugs out there with a track record of decades, which are dirt cheap. You pay $5 for your metformin, and that is, but still, I mean, most people die of some form of cardiovascular disease, which is related to one of these underlying conditions, be it diabetes or hypertension, hyperlipidemia. It's crazy, so that is one thing that really that it annoyed us, basically, and we wanted to help and solve it, and provide kind of good access to these medications on an affordable level. That was the initial spark to create the company. Yeah, when it comes to kind of the learnings from my sugar and the early days to now, beyond that, I think it's very different to build a company today versus in the early 2000s, basically.
Okay.
And there's one thing is really, I mean, we are now at 9 a.m. around about 100 people. I'm here in the office. We are 6. So, it did not change from the first day, basically, when we have been only 6. So, and we are working remotely. It's great that we can tap into a talent pool all over the US, that, would have not been accessible 15 years ago, 10 years ago. But on the other hand, it's really hard, to meet all these people, to get to know them, like we did in my sugar times, when we had like 50, 60, 70 people in an office bustling. And that is very different. And then a huge difference, of course, also, the first business we built in Europe, in a culture and markets that we really understand. We moved to the US. We had no clue. Really, I mean, absolutely no clue. You're a foreigner, you have no network, don't understand. You think you understand it, but you don't understand it. So, and that's very, very different.
What do you do in terms of, sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
No.
What do you do then in terms of the remote teams and helping people? Like, you had a lot of trust with the My Sugar team. You're all in it together. You're all in the same offices. How do you try to recreate that in the modern world? Because you say, like, majority of people aren't going into the office.
Yeah, I mean, we like, of course, calls, meetings, all that. You try to at least, communicate to a team properly and give them transparency about kind of what you think in kind of the headquarter. We did last year also, basically, we brought everyone together. We flew everyone, to California from the US, and also we still have a development and product site in Vienna. And our colleagues came over from Vienna, so that everybody, gets to know each other, meets in person. We didn't overcharge it, with, presentations, business meetings. We just had fun, we played pickleball, we drank 1 or 2 beers, and so I think that is super important. But now with a growing organization, of course, it gets harder and harder to bring everybody together into one place. But it remains a challenge, for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And I didn't realize that. So 9 a.m. Health's original, like the original, I guess, agenda or the ethos was you were trying to get better access to medication for patients.
Yeah.
You negotiate, like, what's the idea? I mean, I'm sure I see now, like, it's probably evolved from the original impetus, but that spark was that you were going to engage with pharmaceutical companies or generic houses and say, we're looking for these types of medications and we want to be an access provider. Is that actually what started 9 a.m. Health? or did
Yeah,
I misunderstand that a bit?
pretty much. No, pretty much. But you're also right. We also evolved since then. The first product was a super affordable, direct to patient, chronic care product. So, and we were covering basically what we covered, what we are still covering, hypertension, hyperlipidemia, and diabetes, pre-diabetes, type 2 diabetes, and obesity. Back then with generic medications. And I still love the product. We sold it for $29. You got your metformin, you get unlimited access to providers. We started to sell it. It worked well at the beginning, and then it was not good enough to completely take off, but it was too good to shut it down, basically. And but then we refocused to the employer world. So we still have a direct to consumer track, but most of our business we're doing now with employers. And of course, one big thing happened in cardiometabolic care, the rise of GLP-1s. So that kind of flipped the market almost on its head. It changed the game. And there's one huge thing that it changed. It changed how patients feel about a medication. Because, like type 2 diabetes and blood pressure, cholesterol, the most boring diseases you can imagine. Of course, they don't hurt, you don't feel it. It takes forever, but then you get like complications, So nobody really there was no high motivation to get a treatment, But with these GLP-1s, things, really changed. So people, for the first time, ever, basically, they want to get a treatment, because it has that, nice upside. You get skinnier, you look better, you feel better, you're more accepted by society, all that, and it's amazing, it's really amazing. And that kind of, don't want to say supercharged our business, but certainly had a huge impact, on how we do business.
Fascinating. I'm conscious of time, and I wanted to get into your role. We could talk about this for a long time, but I wanted to get into your role model company. I can't believe nobody's picked Google before, but so first of all, well done on your choice. So let's talk about it in terms of investor, customer, employee, and then broader society. So tell us why you picked Google, and let's get into that.
Yeah, I picked Google because I remember one thing in the early days of my sugar. I talked to a senior guy at IBM, and he told me, yeah, what you're doing is nice, but most of the companies are just one product companies, and they're never going to make it, blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking about it. It kind of hit me because, hey, no, I mean, we built a product. At the end of the day, he was, of course, right. Most companies are one product companies, and some are even successful for a certain period of time with that one product, but then they fail. Because technology overtook them, different market forces whatsoever. But I think Google, they did such a terrific job, of course, having a super well working core business, but from that business basically expanding into other areas, being super smart with acquisitions, and expanding their footprint, and are now such a integral part of our lives, that we basically can't imagine to run our lives without Google, So, and that I find absolutely fascinating. And that's why I picked Google.
Okay. So it's hard to argue against, but we're going to try a little bit. So, so it's clear that they've delivered really interesting shareholder returns for a long period of time. It's become such a massive organization now, right? So how do you think they look after their employees, and how do you think they'll be viewed in terms of their impact in the world?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't work at Google. I I read basically the same articles that you are reading, one thing, but one thing I clearly know is, and I've been a few times at the Google campus. I honestly think it's an amazing place to work. I think they take care of their employees and they want a lot from their employees if they're good, right? Because I think they pay extraordinary salaries, and make it hard for other companies to compete, of course, as well, But in that regard, I think they probably do a great job in retaining talent, finding talent, and that to answer one part of your question. The other part is, the impact of Google on the world. And I think, I think Google does not always play fair. I think they are clearly also kind of how they misuse the power and leverage they have. And I think, we need, that goes applies for the world that I, work in, the healthcare world, but also should apply to tech. We need some form of regulation. I'm against kind of this over-regulatory kind of environment that we have in Europe and in Germany. It's horrible. It stifles innovation. It stifles growth. It's awful. But on the same hand, we also do not want a society where a handful of companies basically dictate how we live, how we communicate, what we see, which kind of views we see. I think that's that's a huge challenge for our society at the moment, for sure. Yeah, and Google plays a role in that, undeniable.
They got a lot of bad press in terms of their first iterations on AI and the censoring that was going on and the DEI stuff, and there was a lot of press about how the employees had gone completely woke and were taking over the company. So there seems to be some interesting. I suppose it's just a big organization, right?
Yeah, no, but honestly, I think probably rightfully so. They got this criticism. I think that no product should be politicized. Really, that is. I think we more and more get to a world where even your car brand. I drive a Tesla. I'm thinking about selling my Tesla. I admire Elon Musk for so many things, but I think what he is doing at the moment is horrible. He is not elected. He is so deeply entangled in so many things. That I honestly, he is, that is, but I should not be thinking that way, because I like my Tesla and I like how it drives and and all that. But and it can't be that we drink a certain beer or don't drink it, drive a certain car or don't drive it because of political beliefs for what these brands are standing for. It will rip our societies apart. And
Yeah, interesting. I have a sort of side question, like the ability to stay focused. I mean, I know it's personal, but to run a first company exit and now run a second company and have a little bit of a broader lens now with 9 a.m., but really still be focused on, this chronic care and solving for chronic care and support for chronic care and management of chronic care. It takes, that's like beyond persistence, right? The people say, like, when you kind of go after one company and you pull it out through to exit, then your persistence on that particular company in itself is an achievement. But then to stay on this same topic and continue to go at it again. And in the description you had about why you chose Google, you said something about how they, could kind of reinvent themselves and continue to spin out new businesses. But in that sense, I think there's a little bit more diversification in their approach. And you have this like laser focus on, digital health and chronic care condition. And I'm so fat. I don't have that kind of intentionality over one topic all the time. And I'm so fascinated by that. Like, how do you maintain the energy? Is it because it's so personal? Is it because you're solving for things you want to see? Or how would you describe that sense of just determination and persistence around something so specific for so long?
Yeah, I think it comes down to kind of my personal story, and like I can relate so well with how many people are struggling. Although I have type 1 diabetes, I understand how a person with type 2 diabetes feels, and I understand how a person that struggles to manage the weight feels, because it's all about our lifestyle choices and changes we have to do, and we as humans are just too weak to do, so. And I also think, that you can probably not, because I mean, if you spend your life work on a certain topic, you want to have an impact. And I think there's no other area in healthcare where you can have a bigger impact than in cardiometabolic care. Because, again, so many people are dying because of these conditions of which we perfectly know how to treat them. And, we kind of the holy grail for us is, we call it a forever journey, because if you live with a chronic condition, you have it until the end of your life. That's basically the definition of a chronic condition, and it's a forever journey. So the holy grail for us is we want to basically design a perfect forever journey of a patient, and keep them compliant with our program, including lifestyle changes, maybe drugs, like all the care they can get. And that's, yeah, I think it sounds too big when I call it a life mission or whatnot, but it's something, that keeps me motivated every morning to get up, and do something to get closer to that holy grail.
Yeah. What's 9 a.m. stand for? Where did the name come from?
Yeah, I mean, it basically also ties a bit into what I was just describing, like when we were thinking about the name, we were thinking about how hard it is to live with a chronic condition. And, I perfectly know that some days are just bad. I just, love that ice cream too much. I forget to inject, whatever, And the good thing about a chronic condition is there's always a new day. There's a new beginning, And for us, we said, okay, 9 a.m. in the morning, that's basically when your new day starts. You dropped off your kids at school, you go to your office or, start your day. And it's a new day for you, you can start all over again, And that's kind of how we think about that forever journey, If you kind of miss one day, hey, don't worry about it. There's the next day. That's the reason for 9 a.m.
I think that's a fabulous way of wrapping it up, talking about forever journeys and the impact and the personal impact. So, Frank, pleasure to see you again. Thanks for joining us, and we wish you all the best at 9 a.m. and happy to help in any way we can.
And
thank you so much. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, no, and we expect to see in your future like a elderly care option for,
Yeah.
for chronic care. I expect you're still going to be on it. Okay? All the way through to the end.
That's right.
Yeah, I'll say, the older I get, I evolve as well. So like, let's see what the next thing will be. No, but we built that company to last. That is clearly a goal. But because it's such an impactful mission, we think there's a lot to do.
Great.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks again. It was a pleasure.
Great to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.